All right, guys, let's go through what this process might look like for working through a tutorial and then adding one of your own images. So let's go through this one, replacing a product shot with background layer mask. So we start going through this tutorial. It says we want to select the subject. So since we've got the headphone layer selected down here, I'm going to go to select subject, and that's going to automatically select it. Now, pretty well, obviously, as well, but it's a really high contrast image against a white background. Now, it does not select the shadow, but that's okay. So we've got the subject selected. We're going to jump over to the next thing. It says to use the quick selection tool. So I'm going to come and choose not object selection, but quick selection tool. And then we're going to subtract the selection because we're going to subtract this little white area in the middle. So if we switch over to subtract selection or hold the option key, if we still are on new selection, you'll notice holding the option key down gives you that little minus. So that will actually select that area and remove it from the selection. So now we've got the headphones without any of the white, including this white in the middle. Great. So let's choose next. And we already dragged over the section in the middle. So it says to add a layer mask. So the mask is going to, let me just hold down the shift key and add selection to all of this. Let me try that one more time. Image, actually select subject. That's okay. And then I've already got my layer mask. Hold my option key down and select that one. Great. Add the layer mask, and that's going to mask out all of the area that's not selected. So the layer mask icon is right here, and you see that that has now created a layer mask that hides everything in it. So it hides everything that's black and shows everything that's white. So we can see all the white area around the side is now blacked out by the layer mask. So I'm going to click next, and it says to choose to do a new layer, new layer via copy. So we can also just do layer, new layer via copy or Command J, and that copies the layer. You see it just directly copied it up here. So it says what right now, we're going to click on the black and white layer mask of the original headphones. So here's the original headphones. So if I click on that layer mask, you see these little white corners come around it. And now in the next step, we're going to invert that. So image adjustments and invert or Command I actually inverts that mask. So you see now everything that was black is white, which shows that through, and everything that was white is black. So essentially, if I turn off this top layer so you can see it, you'll see that now that layer below is now the white only and is painted black on the layer mask to reveal everything through there. So that gives us a mask, or this gives us back essentially just the shadows on white. So when we go to the blend mode here, and the instructions told us to go to multiply, multiply combines the pixels in such a way that the white pixels become transparent and the black pixels pass through. So if I choose multiply, you'll see that now we've actually got a little bit of those shadows there. So this is now essentially my shadows layer. I'm gonna go ahead and rename it shadows, just so we can be really clear of what's happening. Now, if the shadows are not dark enough, it says to go to the layer menu and choose new adjustment layer, and we're going to choose levels. Now we could have also done that down here in the lower right hand corner, clicked on this and chosen new, because this is the adjustment layer icon. Now this says to turn on this use previous layer to create clipping mask. So I'm going to turn that on, and here's what that means. When I hit OK, you see that it creates the levels adjustment layer, but it's got this little arrow pointing down, which means that it's only affecting this one, not the background. So it's not changing the levels of the background as well. So levels here, it says to come over, and we can see our dark pixels, our medium brightness pixels, and our bright pixels. There's not a lot of super bright pixels on here. So if we grab this, as we move it up, more of the medium dark pixels are now lumped into dark. So moving this up makes that shadow pixels that are still coming through even darker. If you make that lighter, then more of those mid-tone pixels are getting brightened, and as a result, the shadow is less visible. So if I pull this up to about 65 where it says, you can see that we've now got a darker shadow. Great. Okay, so we've done this and it's good to go. So now we just want to go through and do one with something different. Fair enough. I'm going to go ahead and just turn these off. Don't forget to take your screenshots if you're turning this in for a project. But I'm going to come over to Google, and on image search, Google Images, I just typed in product with white background. So there were several different images here that we could use. We could certainly use a shoe, but I'm looking, I looked at this initially using something like this cup, which has a nice shadow as well, but it's really difficult to separate out the white cup from the white background. It's not really difficult. It just takes time to tediously go in because the object selection is going to have a difficult time distinguishing between these white and the white background. So I'm going to go with something like this purse, or in this case, I like this little perfume bottle. So I'm just going to right click on it and choose copy image, switch back over to Photoshop and paste it in. And make sure that I've got none of the layers selected. And now when I paste, so I had the levels layer selected and it said I can't paste into a levels layer. So I deselected them all and pasted it in. So there we go. Well, now we need to get rid of this gray side. Let's just switch to the marquee tool. The M key will take us to the marquee tool. Rectangular marquee should be good. And I'm just going to select everything over on this side and delete it. Oh, make sure I have the correct layer selected so that that is going to affect that layer. Boom. All right, now I'll hit the V key to switch back to my move tool, and I want to lose this selection. Deselect is Command D. So let's go ahead and move this guy right over here somewhere on the table. Looks good. All right, so we need to do a couple of things. Make sure the layer is selected. I'm going to go and back repeat the same instructions I saw earlier. So I'm going to select subject, and bam, because it's nice and contrasty with that white, it did a good job finding it. Although I noticed that it's not quite getting this bottom right here, so I need to add to the selection. So I can go in and I could try several different tools like the quick selection tool. And if I have that quick selection tool and I come down here, I'm gonna make sure I'm in add selection. And if I'm still in new selection, I prefer to stay in new because then I can simply hold down the shift key and you see, maybe it might be hard to see, but when you hold the shift key down, a little plus shows up in the middle and that's gonna add to the selection. So if I click and I drag along here, getting just a little bit of excess. Let's zoom in just a little bit. Hold that shift key down. And the other thing we could do is, of course, just use a regular lasso tool. So I could come in and switch over to something like this lasso tool. And I'm going to go in. And in this case, it looks like I'm just starting to shave off the bottom. So I'm going to hold the Option key, which gives me my little lasso with a minus. And I'm just going to remove all of these pixels that are not correct. And you can see I'm just barely kind of selecting around this little bottom edge. And that looks pretty good. If I want to grab this little piece and make this a little smoother, I'll hold the shift key down so it turns back into a plus selection, adds to the selection. I'm just going to kind of loop through there and grab those last few pixels. That's probably smooth enough for now. All right, so now my selection is made. Let's mask it. Go to the mask, boom, masked it out. Great. Now the instructions it taught us, if you want to practice these to get better, is we need to duplicate this layer. So just make a duplicate. So with it selected, duplicates Command J. It's just going to copy that layer one up. But then we need to select the mask on the original layer. And this one we're going to invert to become the shadows. So under, I think it was image adjustments or maybe it was layer invert. I'm actually forgetting, but it was Command I. And Command I inverts the layer. Like, let's just see where it was. Oh, it is under the image menu. When you hit the shortcut Command I, you see which menu flashes. And there I can see somewhere in here is the ability to invert. There it is, image adjustments, invert, Command I. So now that is going to be my shadows layer. So I'll type shadows. And let's see, so this, since all of these headphones are just turned off, I've now got my layers inverted, but this one essentially is only showing the shadows and white pixels, so the shadows layer. So if I turn back on the top one, I can see the main subject, but then this middle one, in order for it to eliminate the white pixels and only show through the darker pixels, I have to go and change its blend mode. And the blend mode controls the way the different pixels on the different layers blend together. So I'm going to choose multiply, and multiply hides the white pixels on that layer inside the whiteness of the image. Again, not the mask, but it hides the white pixels, and you can see now the shadow comes through just fine. And again, if we wanted to add levels, we could do go up and add a new adjustment layer here, or we can simply come down to our adjustment layer icon in this bottom, click on this, and choose levels. And you see that the levels there, it pops up and it's above the shadows layer. But if I just start grabbing this, because it's not using this layer as a clipping mask, it's actually going to affect everything beneath, including the shadows, or not the shadows, but including the background layer. Let me make this a little taller just so we can see it. So now, with that said, if I do this, you'll see the whole image gets darker, or the whole image gets brighter. So because I'm moving this center to the right, now more pixels are considered dark and it's pushing them to the dark side if I pull this the other way. So I'm going to leave this alone for a second, and I want to make this use the shadows layer as a clipping mask. And to do that, I just hold down the Option key when I'm holding my mouse between the layers, and you'll see it gives this little box with that little down pointing arrow. And when I Option click it, you see now it's using this as a clipping mask. So it's actually essentially only affecting the levels now for the shadows layer. So if I grab this and I move it, you notice it changes the darkness or brightness of only that layer, only the shadows layer, and it leaves the rest of the layers beneath it, including the background, alone. So I can adjust this, get a nice little red shadow on it. Command 0 to zoom back out, and I've got a new project that shows this. So I could take my screenshots, and I've repeated the process and hopefully gotten a little bit more understanding of what's happening in the process. As we keep working through these, we're going to be in really good shape. So that is just one example that you can use of all the dozens of examples and tutorials you have to choose from that then you're going to add your own images into to be able to build on top of. All right, thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.